I live in a beautiful place called Enkanasa Village Residence. And it is a home which I really rehabilitated. It was a desert. In fact, it was a maram pit where the contractors of the main road from Narok to Nairobi were harvesting all the maram to be able to fix the main road to Nairobi. No one wanted that piece of land. When I bought that piece of land, Madam Speaker, I bought it for a mayor, about 18,000 shillings an acre. And today, even if you give me 10 million shillings an acre, I would not take that piece of land. Today, that piece of land has got over 30,000 trees. And no one would have thought that anything would grow there. When you leave my residence and you walk to the neighbors, the climate change is real. When you get into my place, it is cold, it is beautiful. And I'm happy that my neighbors are slowly seeing the benefit of planting trees, and each one of them is planting trees. I want to encourage all Kenyans to plant a tree a day. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I want to go straight and comment on the proposed amendments to several pieces of legislation. One, which is the Forest Conservation and Management Act, where the distinguished senator wishes to amend and insert one, it says promote afforestation and reforestation in arid and semi-arid areas in the country. Madam Speaker, I would like to beseech the distinguished senator to expand that and to actually not only limit to semi and arid areas, but to be able to make it a national exercise for every part of the country. Because it is always important that when you know that you're in a race, and you know very well that you've got what you call your home ground, and you know no one can be able to beat you there. When you are going out to look for more support from elsewhere, for you to be able to win your race, you must also protect what you already have. Madam Speaker, I want to beseech the distinguished senator, and I'm going to be working with him because now the bill is ours, that we expand this to be able to ensure that we require every county, every urban area, every sub-county, every town, every school, every church to make sure that they plant trees. One of my problems with this amendment that my brother is introducing is that it is requiring that whenever you fall a tree, you then now have to go and replant a tree in a place where it is designated by a service, by these guys who are called what? Service what? They are called forestry services. Madam Speaker, there is no point of creating a lot of red tape or bureaucracy when it comes to protecting the environment. If you fall a tree, make sure you immediately plant 2 more trees there. If you now want to wait until you go and plant trees in a designated area, that means where you fell that tree, if the service does not designate you to plant and give you instruction to tell you to replant where you fell the tree, it means that we will create oases in other areas and we continue creating deserts in other parts of the country. So, Madam Speaker, I'd like to beseech the distinguished senator that we amend that and ensure that we limit the bureaucracy. When my colleague says, a person who harvests a tree shall replace the tree under the direction and in the area designated by the service, I want to plead with my brother. Of course, I would like to be informed, Madam Speaker, if you allow me to be informed. I know you've...
Proceed and inform the Senator.
Thank you.
Senator
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to inform my distinguished friend from Narok. The intention of the bill was to introduce a clause that will cater for specific seedlings and trees which can grow in harsh conditions of arid and semi-arid areas. And that's why I introduced that clause. But Madam Speaker, the bill as it is already covers the rest of the country. You see, the problem I was facing, Madam Speaker, when I was looking at this bill, is that most of the arid and semi-arid areas of Kenya also fall under areas which have been marginalized. So the reason I introduced this is so that we are also not marginalized in the fight against climate change and in the initiative of growing trees. So, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to inform my good friend, Senator of Narok, that this clause was just to introduce what was left out in the existing bill, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. You may proceed, Senator Ledamoleke.
Madam Speaker, let me thank my good friend, Haji, for that wonderful information that he's been able to enrich my thinking. Madam Speaker, I'd like to expand by saying, and maybe to respond directly to his new information, that now it is now imperative that we introduce a new clause to be able to uproot all the madenke, which is not of any use in this country, particularly in arid and semi-arid areas, and uproot them and plant new trees. Madam Speaker, it is true that arid and semi-arid areas are left and they are ignored. And there is a very easy way of planting trees. There's a gentleman from Naivasha who I also worked with when I was planting trees in the Mau forest. He has a company called Seed Balls. And what he did is that he took charcoal and he put seeds inside the charcoal and sort of like just made, some of them even took like, I think it's cow dung, and then he put in the seeds, and he just spread them all across, particularly trees for the acacia trees. When it rained, Madam Speaker, the seed found itself penetrating into the ground. And in areas where it is dry, you'll find that there are so many acacia trees which are growing. And I remember when I was planting trees in the Mau forest, I brought this gentleman, I can't remember his name, but he works for a company called Seed Ball, Kenya Seed Ball. And we also planted a lot of his seeds in the Mau forest. So, Madam Speaker, I support this, but the only concern that I have is when it says that a person who fell a tree for a reason other than its harvesting shall replace the tree under the directions and the area designated by the service. My concern is the direction and the area designated by the service. Hypothetically, suppose the service decides you fell a tree in Narok, now go to Nakuru and plant them there. I think it is important that we amend this further and to say that a person who fell a tree for a reason other than its harvesting shall first demonstrate that they have planted more trees, and they must report to the service. That is when this direction from the service come in. Let us make it that you want to fall a tree, first of all, plant trees, go to the service, let them guide you and tell you, we want you to go and plant trees in Wajir County. When I went across Wajir was such a beautiful, and actually the soil there is very fertile. We planted trees, and when you could see the soil, it had some sand in it, which means any little rain that falls into the place, it is absorbed and it is retained there, and trees are able to grow very fast. So, Madam Speaker, I support this, but I do not want the bureaucracy, the red tape, because the service might decide to slow you down. They might say we do not have regulations on how to proceed with this. I've seen the function of the service, Madam Speaker, and it is put there. I normally have a big problem with creating authorities and authorities and authorities, because you just make it a red tape. Why not just require every school to introduce a course in the curricula to be able to teach young Kenyans on how to plant trees, or to require young Kenyans to plant trees? So you take a course. I remember when I was in the university, I took a course in PE. I was asked to do PE. And I did. I went and I played golf as one of my courses. Should we not have it in the curricula that every school must have a course where people are taught about the environment and their kids are required to grow trees? We go to every urban center. If you go to every urban center, Madam Speaker, you'll be shocked. Instead of us making beautiful urban centers, what we do is that we have kiosks everywhere, kiosks everywhere, kiosks everywhere. All of us in this house travel. We every time we go to the UK, and when you go to the UK, downtown London or central London, you will see trees which are being planted. I think that is what we should now require county governments to make sure that as part of the money that we send to them, they set aside an amount of money that must be dedicated to climate change. And this is because we care about the future generation. If we don't, I'm telling you, Madam Speaker, even where we rest eternally, we will not rest peacefully. Because when we had an opportunity to be able to make this world a better place, we destroyed it. So, Madam Speaker, I support this entirely. And let us not, and I wanted to beseech my brother, that we should not say that we celebrate. There's a clause here where it says that there will be a full week in March. It says that, I can't remember which clause it was. No, it is 55. That the Forest Conservation and Management Act is amended by deleting section 55 and substituting therefore with the following new section. The national and county government shall observe a national tree planting week from the 15th day of March to the 21st day of March in each year for such other or such other week the Cabinet Secretary may, by notice of Gazette, designate. The problem I have with that, Madam Speaker, is that you will find that the amount of money which will be spent during that week on other unnecessary things, tea, fuel, will be, choppers, will be more than the amount of money which can be used to plant trees. So the best thing to do is to say that during that week, or you set up a daily, or like once a week, because all of us were given statistics here by the seconder of this bill, where he said that forest cover in this country is wanting. So why don't we say that every Friday we only work until 11? From 11 to 5 p.m., every Friday, Madam Speaker, we plant trees. Every Friday we plant trees. That, I think, will actually help people. Because if you plant trees, you have to demonstrate, and it has to be part of your payroll. I've seen, Madam Speaker, something which I highly support in these amendments. The introduction of incentives, tax incentives, for those companies that encourage tree planting. That I support entirely. In fact, we're all talking about the issue of carbon credit. There are companies now outside this country that are coming to Kenya, from the UK, and they're coming here and buying carbon credit, or they're even coming here and investing in environmental preservation projects, and then when they go back to their countries, they are given a tax break. So I think this here is something that I fully support. I would want us to, because of my time, I can see the time is running, I will sit with the distinguished senator from Garissa, who I really thank for bringing these amendments, to be specific in terms of semi-arid and arid areas. We have to have plans. Madam Speaker, if today this country can be able to prioritize installing the electricity grid in Wajir, in Mandera, and Marsabit. If Wajir, Mandera, and Marsabit would have electricity, you will find companies coming up and creating jobs for the youth. You will find, even when you talk about every county having a tree nursery, I'm telling you, you'll find those youth from Wajir and Mandera, as well as Marsabit and Garissa, working at night, planting those trees. Because anywhere they get water, if there is any water that they can be able to pump up, they will use that electricity. So, Madam Speaker, security also, thank you, my dear brother, will also improve. So I think as we are all agonizing here and talking about all the things that we want to do for this country, let us prioritize the northern eastern part of this country. Let us not continue discriminating against them. In fact, this Adani deal that everybody keeps talking about here, If Adani comes today and says we are going to Northeastern and we are going to make sure that Wajir, Marsabit, and Mandera County have electricity, I'll be the first one to support and say yes. Let's build the grid. Let us take it there. Improve security. Let us run this country as one country. But now when you tell me you are getting Adani so that you can build a Molo line, Suswa line, and we already have electricity, seriously, we cannot concentrate everything in one place. So let us promote our environment. Let us make sure that we reduce the red tape, allow people to plant trees. In fact, we should have it as a competition. That should be an incentive. Everyone in this house today have a company or two. In your company, every year, as part of your budget, make sure you put a certain amount of money that you can be able to use to be able to buy seedlings, and you plant those trees, and you adopt those trees. Today, Madam Speaker, if you go to the Masai Mara Game Reserve, there's a beautiful camp called Olonana. And when you go to Olonana, before you go into your room, they tell you, Kuja, come. We want you to plant a tree here. If you're there with your kids, you'll plant a tree, and they'll put your name. And that encourages the environment to do well. Madam Speaker, finally, there's a gentleman whom I met recently. His name is Mark. And this gentleman is working currently, I think it's Mark Hughes, he's working currently in Kakamega Forest. And when we are sitting down and talking, this is the gentleman who is responsible today for even planting trees at the Red Hill Link Road. He's the one who has also planted trees up in Tigoni area. He's planted trees in Narok County and planted trees in everywhere. And one of the things he was saying, I wish I could be given the Southern Bypass Road. I wish, people will be able to come, even in Kakamega, not to bring exotic trees. Let us plant indigenous trees. Because one of the biggest challenge, Majority Whip, that this gentleman is facing is that he's seeing other trees being introduced there, which are foreign to that environment. Like, Moringa is a good tree, Madenge, they are even taking palm trees. Majority Leader, you don't know this. Let me tell you. They are taking palm trees from Mombasa to plant them in Kakamega Forest. Seriously. We need to be able to take advice. This is a gentleman who is old. In Masai Skolo, Seuri is almost 80 years old, but he's still planting trees and planting trees. So ideally, what we need to do is that we've got beautiful trees in this country. We've got the Meru oak, we've got Oloirian, we've got, the acacia tree. Oloirian is the African olive tree, or scientifically called Olea africana. We've got another one in Masai called Osoko Noi, which are beautiful. I see them being planted across. So I think, to conclude this, I would like us to limit this direction by the service. Encourage people to do that. Senator Haji, let us add a requirement for every school to introduce a new course for students to take in planting trees. Let us introduce a new clause here to do away with the Mathenke tree, uproot it completely, and replace it with a new tree. If Senator Haji will tell me that anyone who falls a tree today will be directed by the service to go and uproot the Mathenke tree, I would clap my hands. Because if you go to Marigat, Madam Speaker, today in Baringo County, during a dry season, you will think that you're in a very beautiful green environment. But if you take a goat from Marigat, and they have beautiful goats there, if you open the mouth, zero teeth. Mathenke has completely destroyed the dental structure of cows and also of sheep and goat. So today, this issue of environment is something which is very serious. We know it. I'm so happy that I introduced aerial seeding into this country, where you plant with an aircraft. Northeastern, we can plant millions and millions of trees using aircrafts. Instead of cabinet secretaries using, yes, Madam Speaker, I'd like to be informed.
What's your point of information? Actually, your time was up, but you'll be informed. Proceed, Senator Abdul.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I really like the contribution Senator of Narok is making. I just want to inform him that there's a challenge in northeastern and most of the arid and semi-arid areas is that we don't plant trees. We have to grow and nurture the trees. We cannot use the system that he was using in Narok, where he takes an aircraft and throws the balls of seeds. And once it lands somewhere, it will eventually grow. In most of the regions, maybe around 60% of the landmass in Kenya, you cannot just plant a tree or just plant vegetation. It has to be planted, and there has to be government initiative to be able to nurture and take care of these trees so that they can grow. Once they grow, and if they're trees that are conducive to the environment, then you will have changed the vegetation of that area. That's what I wanted to inform my good friend, the Senator of Narok.
Okay. Senator Ledama, you just wind up. You were on 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to appreciate the information from my brother. I want to further contribute and say that I've seen, because I've studied this issue of the environment very much. And in Brazil, in some areas where it is, Brazil has got different environments. There's an institution that went, and what they did in a very dry area is that they dug some holes all across, and they left. And then when it rained, because it rains, what year rains? Garissa rains. Mandera, look at Mandera, Madam Speaker. Mandera, and this is something we don't recognize. When the distinguished Senator Captain Ali Roba was the governor of Mandera, he had a tree plant, he had an environmental exercise project where, in fact, he won an award, a big award. So I think these things, it is possible. So to conclude, Madam Speaker, it is not only public land. Yes, let's plant trees in public lands, but we also need to plant trees in our private lands. When you plant trees in our private lands, you improve that environment. In public land, I love the fact that the Senator is pushing county governments to make sure that they plant trees in public lands. Let us start by planting trees in our streets, in our urban centers. Even this Nairobi, we can still continue. Nairobi is beautiful. It's called the green city in Africa. But we can plant trees. So just change one last thing. This issue of keeping 1 week as a national tree week, more people will spend money with choppers and everything than actually planting trees. Let us see whether we can work until 11 a.m. on Fridays. And then from 11:01 to 5 p.m., let us go out there and plant trees. Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Senator Mulgo, you had a point of order. Or what were you requesting for? Please give him the mic.
Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 110, I rise to move that the debate on environmental laws, Bill number 20 of 2024, be now adjourned. Deferred, yes. Yes, deferred.
Who is your seconder?
My seconder is Senator Thangwa.
Senator Thangwa.
I second.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that debate on the Environment Laws Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 23 of 2024, be now adjourned and deferred. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. I now put the question that the debate on the Environment Laws Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 23 of 2024 be now adjourned and deferred. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of contrary opinion say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Next order. I will now reorganize the order paper and request the clerk to call out order number 27.
Order number 27, motion, consolidation of bursary funds for equitable access to education in Kenya.
Senator Karungo Dhao.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to move my
of the court on that issue.
Thank you, Presiding Judge. This is the ruling on the applications. 3 applications were made before the court. The first, a mark paper injunction by learned counsel, Mr. Daniel Chiem, and 2 applications under Rule 32 of the Mutula Rules. They further contend that the Deputy President nominee has not been vetted by the IEBC, which is in any case improperly constituted. In response, the applications have been posed on the grounds that the court is now functus official, having already rendered itself on the application for conservatory orders, that the matter paper injunction is not a proper remedy in the circumstances, that the Court of Appeal is now seized of a similar application, which is for stay, and that this application should have been made earlier, noting that the nomination of the Deputy President designate was made previously. We have carefully considered the applications and responses, and in our considered view, our ruling that has just been delivered addresses these issues succinctly. Not only has the bench gone into great strides to explain the consequences of granting conservatory orders, which is to cause a de facto suspension of a section of the Constitution, we have equally warned against such a practice. To again turn around and grant orders whose effect is the very suspension of the Constitution that we have stated will now be an absurdity. We further note that some of the arguments that have been raised on the floor will form substantive arguments at the main hearing of the petitions. In any case, since the Court of Appeal is already seized on the matter, as we have confirmed from both parties, from both sides rather, the parties have an opportunity to move the Court of Appeal accordingly. As such, the applications are all hereby disallowed. Orders accordingly. And before we pen off, just a point of clarification on the other issues that were raised by 2 petitioners, Dr. Bosso and I believe your co-petitioner. If you are able to access this ruling, the ruling of today on CTS, you will note that disposition number E states that there will be a mention for further directions on the way forward in respect of pending applications and pending conditions on the 7th of November 2:30 p.m. in open court. We will address that pending application during that meeting.
No, we don't have
My Lord, on behalf of the respondents, we want to thank you and appreciate the verdict of the court. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. That is the case there that was challenged, the conservatory orders for impeached DP regarding Gachagua, who now, as per what Judge Freda Mogambi has said, that now the parties can move to the next stage, that is the Court of Appeal, and that is after earlier this afternoon, I should say, we did see that particular ruling where the High Court vacated the conservatory orders, setting a clear path for Professor Kithure Kindiki. But you remember also the question that has come to the fore is whether there was proper nomination of the DP designate, nominee DP. As we close this particular broadcast, Wanjiku Waithera, that is what Justice Mogambi now says. The disgruntled parties can move to the next stage. From your perspective as a legalist, what do you deduce from this? How is this going to look like as we close this broadcast?
I mean, clearly there's a dissatisfaction on the part of the petitioners with important questions being raised over the fact that certain applications were not handled, and in specific the application barring the swearing in of Professor Kithure Kindiki, who is now the Deputy President designate. And the court has pronounced itself. It said that once parties access the rulings, they'll see that every question that was raised has been dealt with in that ruling. And so moving forward, what we are likely to see, yes, there's a likelihood that certain petitioners or disgruntled parties will be applying for reviews before the same court. There's also a likelihood that we'll see cross appeals being raised at the Court of Appeal. And of course, I believe that now all the eyes rest with the Court of Appeal, which is resuming on the 6th of November, which is the date that parties had been granted. Let's see now what the next steps look like. But as of now, the court has made itself clear there can never be a vacancy, which would be, similar to having an effect of suspending the constitution.
Yes, and also Justice Ogola did say that as it stands before that particular ruling, the roles that would have been performed by the Deputy President cannot be performed by any other person, not even the National Assembly Speaker, part of what informed him, saying that indeed, as Article 149 does stipulate, we does not envision any vacancy in that particular position. So all eyes are now on the Court of Appeal.
Indeed.
All right, we now close this live broadcast. It's been quite an eventful afternoon there. Wanjiru Waithera, thank you so much for making time for us since early 2 p.m. till right now. We really appreciate you for your time and inputs into just understanding where we are as a country and what this means for our jurisprudence moving forward.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
We now close this live broadcast, pave way for normal programming of the day. I'm Doreen Arange. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation, or KDIC, a state corporation established under the KDI Act Cap 487C. But who exactly are we? KDIC provides a deposit insurance for customers of member institutions. KDIC. Safer, stronger together.